Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode 106 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your agreeable host, Scott Botman, and joining me this episode is my number one podcast co host, Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how's it going?
It is going. It is February 5th already,
Yeah, I
man.
can't believe it. This year is like in accelerated hyperspace mode.
Yeah, I mean, after 2020 and 2021 was took forever. 2022 kind of felt normal. And then this year's like, phew, like you said, already off into hyperspace. So,
Yeah, totally. Well, tonight's episode of the podcast, we're going to be reviewing the Bad Batch episode Tribe, which is all about two things that you can't get more Star Wars than, and that's lightsabers and Wookiees. And if we're going to talk about Wookiees, we have to have our very own Gooey Chewy, Mr. Miracle, Dave Filcloni, the man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. Oh, sorry, the Sherlock translator is offline. Okay, try that again.
Ah, yes, I am so excited to be here, and I love this episode. So excited to talk Wookiees with you guys, or at least at you guys,
Yeah.
because I'm telling you, there's a lot in this episode, and yeah, I can't wait to talk about it.
but
Yeah,
at
not
least
just-
Hunter could remember a little bit of it, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
Otherwise, it would have been a really weird episode.
I mean, not just lightsabers and Wookiees, but this time we got a Wookiee lightsaber wielder. It's just
Yes.
a Wookiee with a lightsaber. Yeah, it's awesome. Which is actually more of a thing in contemporary Star Wars literature in the High Republic era, but we can talk about that later. So, yeah, in case you guys haven't put it together, we are talking about the whole storyline here with Gunji making his way back
Yay.
to Star Wars animation. So,
The
guys,
cutest Wookiee ever.
he is the cutest Wookiee. And so let's jump right
Yeah, I
into
can't
it.
deny that.
Nathan actually, like the day the episode came out, he messaged us all and said, "Dibs on the first answer to the first question for this podcast." So, Nathan, what did you like best about this episode?
Well, we've already mentioned it. Wookiees!
And
We
lots
get
of
to
them.
see Wookiees and lots of them. And not only do we get to see Wookiees, we get to see Wookiees on Kashyyyk, which is just great. It's like the epitome of Wookiees, and it's a combination of Wookiees and Jedi. There are very few Jedi Wookiees, so
Yeah.
I love to see Gunji make a comeback. Glad to see he survived Order 66, and did so in a way that. Well, I mean, the actual survival of Order 66, I'm not sure, but he survived this episode in a way that I think makes sense for him to continue going on in the Star Wars universe. I thought when we saw him in the previews that, oh man, they're going to have to kill him off because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But I think they've done it in such a way that it's okay if he just lives out his days on Kashyyyk.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's interesting to note that we have so few times that, like you said, Wookiee and Jedi overlap. I think the first time we really saw that, of course, though, was in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Yoda was hanging out with the Wookiees during the Battle of Kashyyyk.
Well, and that was, a Jedi with Wookiees. But it's even more rare to have a Wookiee who can use the Force.
Yeah. But even that first combination thing is pretty rare.
That's true. Yeah, because Chewbacca always hung out with Han Solo, who very much didn't care about the Force, or didn't quite believe in it at first.
Yeah. But we know that Chewie knew Obi-Wan as well, though. So,
They knew Yoda.
well, he knew Obi-Wan, though, because when they're in the bar, you could tell now that they knew.
No. No, he doesn't know Obi-Wan at that point in time. Bo Shek knows Obi-Wan. And Bo Shek, if you watch, Obi-Wan goes up to this pilot who's all, I can't help you, but this guy probably can. And he points a thumb at Chewbacca.
I
I
just
still
like
feel like he knows them.
I like the behind the scenes dialogue that Peter Mayhew was speaking in the outtakes before they added the to the sound effect reel in A New Hope. When Obi-Wan leaves to go deactivate the tractor beam, and in the original Star Wars there at the original Death Star, if you watch it without any sound effects, you can hear Peter Mayhew say, "Where did you dig up that old fossil? That old man's mental."
Yeah, that is really weird because Peter Mayhew's voice. Yeah, I mean, he did the Wookiee growls, but when he's just talking, his voice is nothing like Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And it sounds so weird. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but George Lucas actually in the early 2000s had a rule that the expanded universe could not have Wookiee Jedi.
I didn't know that. Why was that a rule?
He felt like because Wookiees are so physically dominant that it would be kind of broken, for lack of a better term, for a Wookiee to be able to use the Force. Now,
Wookiee Jedi is OP. Please nerf.
exactly. Now, he did, of course, eventually go back on that. I think primarily because Dave Filoni was like, people would really like this, and he was right.
Yeah.
Well, especially since his lightsaber's made out of bark.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that is cool. That is cool. Okay, well, yeah. So now Derrick and I can go ahead and do our "What did you like best?" Derrick, what did you like best about this episode?
So we were talking about it. Like, obviously, it's a lot of fun. It's a good episode overall when it comes to single story arcs at this point. At least at this, all we know for episode 6 is a one episode for Wookiees for the Bad Batch. But it was overall what I liked most about this was, we were talking offline before, was when the Trandoshan commander or captain or whatever gets picked up by those spider guys, and he just keeps going up in the air and he keeps screaming, and they just get that offline,
Yeah.
So that was funny. So.
Omega and Gunji just kind of walk off. And he's
They're
all
like,
well, guess he's not going to have a good day. Bye.
Yeah. So they got it from here, guys. So
I liked seeing Imperial tanks that are obviously retrofitted battle droid tanks. I think I'm pretty sure this is the first time that we've seen much in the way of an Imperial battle tank. I mean, obviously we saw AT-ATs and some speeders and ATSTs, but they don't really do much in the way of tanks. And it's cool to think that they would take some of the old battle droid tanks and just retrofit them. And it was neat seeing them to be flame tanks. The Star Wars Legion player tabletop battle game in me was very excited to see this, because that could be another Imperial model for the future of that game, and it'd be very easy for Atomic Mass Games to just retrofit their own model of a droid battle tank already to turn it into an Imperial battle tank and give it the cool flamethrower weapon as the main cannon weapon there. It was also cool that the Trandoshans were all about the fire weapons, because they knew that they were on Kashyyyk and there was the forest everywhere, and like it just cements their evilness that they're not only killing Wookiees or capturing them, but they're also destroying the environment. So, it felt like a very 1990s villain move, back when Captain Planet was running the show and the bad guys were always deforesting or polluting or whatever. So yeah, I really
my
enjoyed
clever plan is to pollute the oceans. Like, what do you gain out of this? Pollution.
I've invented a teleportation machine that can put oil at the very heart of the ocean in a spot where the current will flood the entire planet. Teleportation? With that kind of technology, you could cure cancer. I don't want to cure cancer. I want to pollute the oceans. Okay. Sorry, I had to bring in the Sauron meme.
But what I was gonna get off of that though is that by doing that though, that means they can also make kind of like what Nathan had with his little Wookiee warriors. They can make Trandoshan warriors. So now we can have Wookiees and Trandoshans fight.
Yeah, because this was a definite squad of Trandoshans who work for the Empire, which is interesting considering how much xenophobia is working in the Empire. Hey, speaking of Wookiee warrior squads, Nathan's got that one right there.
Yes, I've got 5 of the 6 models built and lots of glue on my fingers.
And several extra arms.
That's true. Yes, like this one right here.
Wookiee
I
arms.
too have.
That would be like selling, Wookiee pelts, right? So for Trandoshans.
Well, I mean, you can get 100 of them for 1 Jedi.
Yes. Well, 1 Gunji.
Yes, yeah, 1 Wookiee Jedi.
Yeah, yeah. Would he be considered the rare?
I think so.
I think we just covered how Wookiee
The
Jedi's are
catch
quite
model.
rare. Yes, he's the chase model.
I mean, apparently, because he's the only one that's technically in canon. Because at this point, we have three of whatever Yoda species is.
Well, we've got
Between-
Buryaga, who is the Wookiee Jedi from Star Wars: The High Republic.
Oh, is he okay? If he's
Yeah.
canon, then okay. Well, it's
Yeah.
still 2 to 3. So
It is. It did. Yeah, they are more rare than whatever Yoda is.
Yeah, because we got Yaddle, Yoda, and Grogu.
Speaking of
Or-
which, I believe Yaddle is also a character who has some appearances in the High Republic. Because
I would hope
you have
so.
Oh,
you
I
have
did not
younger
know.
Yoda running around High Republic, and I think Yaddle is also running around.
Isn't Yoda chasing Yaddle around, getting some tail?
Heyo, that's where
I
Grogu
feel like
came from.
Yoda's too old for her.
He might be. Yoda's robbing the
'Cause
cradle. She's having
I
to
got the impression that he was like a couple hundred years older than her.
maybe so.
Yeah, but in that species, that might be like 5 years.
Well, see, I figured it was more like a couple decades.
Well, once you pass, 300,
It's all the same
cares.
anyway.
It's
right?
all numbers.
Nobody cares.
That's it. It's just a number.
Yeah.
well.
Anyway, okay, moving on. Question numero dos. Nathan, we'll let you go first again. We'll just let you go first the whole time, except for the last one.
Oh no, well,
Except for the third one.
The third one, yeah.
Yeah. All
Um,
right. So number 2, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
there were Trandoshans, and I hate Trandoshans.
Well, I mean that's fair.
Yeah,
They
but
make great fodder.
that's not actually my least favorite part because you need a good villain. So I liked seeing the Trandoshans too. My least favorite part was I felt like they cut a couple of scenes where they are fighting the fires because both times they start fires, they're like, okay,
Get the shovel.
Get the shovel. I'm like, what are you doing with the boing boing boing?
No.
Taking dirt.
Yeah, they're digging the trenches to keep it from spreading.
Yeah, I wish they had like shown that.
Oh,
So what
okay.
you're saying, this would have
Or at
been a
least-
perfect moment to talk about fire safety.
It would have. You need some kind of grayish, smoky colored Wookiee to come out and point to the camera. No.
Maybe wearing a hat. Yeah.
it,
He's
it was
already
more.
furry. What did he say? Tech flips down the thing. I believe he said, looks at camera, lifts up visor. Only you can prevent forest fires.
No, but it felt like the second time, they said, "Oh, go get all the Wookiees so they can help us put out these fires." And like I thought we were going to get a scene where the Wookiees are like, "Okay, well, we didn't really trust you. You fought alongside us, but the Republic did that too." And then the Republic turned around and became the Empire and started looting our planet. But now you're showing that you're willing to work with us to put out these fires, but then we just didn't see that happen.
Mhm.
I almost feel like they had those scenes or were planning to do those scenes and cut them for time. And I hate that because we're on a streaming format. Who cares if it's, an extra 5 minutes?
I'll tell you who cares. It's streaming on Disney Plus here in the USA. There are other countries around the world where in the future Disney Animation is going to syndicate this, and they will put in commercials.
Yeah. That's the thing I hate the most.
Okay, well, I mean,
right there.
Yeah, you're upset with
Corporate greed.
commercialization. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, capitalism. Anyway, but yeah, I totally sympathize with you. I'll go next. The thing I disliked the most was also in relation to the Trandoshans. I wanted a little more clarity as to whether these Trandoshans were like a special detachment of the Imperial Army, or whether they were, as is my thought, mercenaries. I was thinking that somehow they'd been hired by the Empire to take out the Wookiees, but then those actual stormtrooper or clone troopers were there as official representatives of the Imperial Army, and the tanks that they had the Imperial cog painted on them. So I'm unclear because I always thought that the Imperial Army didn't have any alien operatives, any official alien battalions.
Yeah, they were taking orders from the Trandoshan commander. the
Yeah,
clone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that probably could have been explained better. I got the impression that they were like contractors. So they're like not officially part of the army, but they're effectively working for the army. Like they're taking orders in that the army is their customer.
Yeah, I just wish we had more clarity about it. That's what I
Yeah,
dislike. Is
that would have been
it's
good.
kind of a nebulous force organization there.
And I
All
bet
right,
those
Derrick.
clone troopers, stormtroopers, are regretting not reporting it up. So
Yes.
had they
Yeah.
just gone with their gut instincts and reported it in, they would be still alive today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, anybody out there who was still complaining about the clones, the Bad Batch stunning everybody, there were no stun blasts in this episode. There were explosions and firestorms and flamethrowers galore, not to mention killer spider things. All right, Derrick, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
Another one-off episode with very little, if not no, character development. Again, I liked seeing Gunji. I liked the whole Wookiee side of things, so that was great. But how it related back to the Bad Batch, so I feel like you got a little bit with Omega, and like she's kind of like practicing the ritual Gunji's doing, but it didn't tie back to anything. Like it's not like at the beginning of the episode it was the clone troop or was the Bad Batch making the decision to rescue Gunji, and she was like, we don't have time for this, right? It was her making that distinction, right? We got to save him, they're gonna harm him or whatever. They're doing that, and the Bad Batch are like, yeah, slavery bad, right? Hunter's all about that, right? So they rescue him, right? And that's great, and then they go and help. But it just didn't feel like, again, anything was really. And again, the Bad Batch is exposing themselves to the Imperials. I'm assuming one of them would have gotten away and radio back to the rest. Like, hey, there's a bunch of bad, guys dressed up in Clone Force 99 that, or should be wanted, at this point. And it's just giving away more position again. So again, just, I don't know, at this point, I'm kind of feeling like these side missions, and it's always the Empire at this point being the bad guy. And it's like, okay, like, I think it would have been better had there been no Imperials and it just been strictly the Trandoshans were hired to do it, right? It would have made more sense then, because they wouldn't have known who the Bad Batch is. To me, the Stormtroopers are like, why are these guys wearing clone outfits, right? They at least would have questioned something, even if they didn't even know who they were, right? Like, to me, it would have made more sense, because it's not like it's that common. Now, I get they look a little offbeat because they're different sizes and stuff. They're not the standard typical size, but you still think that would have been like, well, this is odd, right?
Yeah, so that almost makes it more conspicuous.
Yeah. So
yeah, there was a bunch of clones, and one of them was huge.
like somebody's. I mean, you would think that they would know them by like Legends Tales. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Like I said, it just, I'm thinking too much into a kid's show. I get it. But to me, I would think it's a little bit more solidified writing in it when it comes into this. That again, this is a third episode in a row where the clone, batch, Clone Force 99's giving themselves away, right? The Bad Batch are giving themselves away. And I feel like, okay. And we were talking about it earlier. And I mean, we'll talk about it with question 5, but it relates back to that, right? So anyways, like I said, that's my gripe. It's just the connectivity between episode to episode and the overall threat I thought that the Empire was going to be with them, that, they were making this whole big episode. What was it? Episode 3 we got, right? That was the big thing with Crosshairs and whatever his name was. Like, I thought that was going to be a bigger deal, but apparently it's not. Like, I guess that's how they're able to do it, because they were dispatched at the end of season 1, according to Empire News, and nobody's caring anymore. So,
and Rampart seems to be wanting to keep that the assumption. Like, Rampart killed the other clone to.
Well, yeah, because he reported that they were dead. So if reports come up that they're actually alive.
So, to me, that'd be great. Good. Like what we got with Andor, right? Seeing behind the scenes in the ISB. Like, I would like that. Like, all these reports are coming in, and Rampart's just randomly killing people.
Yeah,
or to keep it a conspiracy,
or
something, right?
So, like at the end of every episode, somebody walks into Rampart's office. Sir, we have reports of Clone Force 99. Bam!
Don't blam.
No more intern.
It's like, by the way, I need a new secretary. Again, yeah. Yeah, sudden secretary death syndrome.
Secretary death syndrome. That's terrible. Okay. Anyway, the barest of connection, Derek, going back to your point, the barest of connection that I could think of with this storyline wise is Omega does say to the Wookiees, the Empire destroyed our home too. But I mean, that's it. Like, the Empire destroys
But
lots
that
of
was the
people's homes.
Caminos, though. They destroyed the Caminos. They didn't destroy all the clones at this point. They're still utilizing them as free labor. They paid for them, right?
Well,
So
clearly
but they're
Omega
home.
thinks that was all their homes, and because she's like the Empire destroyed our home. So in her mind, when Camino got wiped out, that was the Empire destroying their home. I guess.
Well,
I mean, she is a little girl,
well, there's also several times
she's also the
throughout
oldest out of everybody, though.
That's
Yes.
true. There's several times throughout the Clone Wars, and the Bad Batch themselves have mentioned this, where clones talk about Camino as being home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's the only home world that they have.
Yeah, I get it.
So
Yeah, I don't know.
It definitely got messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we know there's some secret bases somewhere around there because they didn't blow up the planet. And if you don't blow up the planet, there's still somebody around. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and we know they're off
they're
floating
all,
in
like,
whatever
underwater
facility too. So that they took what's her nuts too.
Yeah.
So-
Tentive. No.
Mount
Tentis.
Tantis.
Mount Tentis. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, question number 3, which we just almost already did. What connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy? Derek, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
I mean, this is obviously. I'm hoping this is going to go into question 5 a little bit. So I kind of want to hold off on it. So I'll hold off.
Okay, all right.
Because I'll connect it to episode 5.
Okay.
Or question 5, I'm sorry.
So for me, there were lots of connections, and we could talk like the rest of our episode about this. But I'll stick to the one that made me go, "Ooh, neat!" It was the chain codes. I'm always fascinated by this as an almost new piece of old Star Wars lore that was essentially introduced in The Mandalorian. When we talked about Grogu's chain code, and then chain codes apparently were like the social security number or the identification of citizens of the galaxy. And it's interesting to note that they apparently predate the Empire and postdate the Empire because Mando uses them post-Empire. And then I believe there's been some recently produced, but back before in the Clone Wars episode where somebody talks about chain codes. And of course, in this episode of The Bad Batch, the opening gambit, if you will, is them producing fake chain codes to sell to a
Vanguard.
group of mercenary droids called the Vanguard Axis, which to me that could have been a whole episode all by itself. Those guys were cool. They were like some weird hybrid tactical droid, battle droid, protocol droid almost.
Want to be IG brand.
Yeah, exactly. And they seem to be pretty capable fighters. They were imposing. I loved the individual color scheme thing going on. They were like droid Power Rangers, but evil, or if not evil, coldly logical. Because remember when Omega was all like, "You guys aren't going to hurt him," and they're like, "No, we do not intend to hurt him. We intend to sell him to the Empire." Which, hey,
Like technically, this is not harming him.
yeah, it's like in Terminator 2. Don't kill anybody. And then in the next scene, blam, shoots the guy in the knee. What did I just say? He'll live. So.
Yes, the Bible does have some quite specific things to say about killing people. It's somewhat fuzzier on the subject of kneecaps.
That's right. So, yes, I enjoyed the Vanguard Axis droids, and I kind of hope we get to see them again. But the idea of chain codes prevalent in contemporary Star Wars media, and this was cool to know that someone with the kind of acumen like Tech could make false or forge chain codes. We've seen people forge spaceship identification transponders. We've seen people forge code cylinders, forge computer records. So it's nice to know that this isn't supposedly some world where chain codes are useful because they're unforgeable. I mean, yes, it's an NFT, but only in so much as one cannot yet funge it. Make it fungible.
Make it
Anyway,
a fungible
copy it.
token.
Yes, make it a fungible.
Fungible?
Fungible, tradable. So it's cool the idea that they have the counterfeit chain codes, and I'm interested to know what did the Vanguard Axis droids want with chain codes? Because droids, of course, don't have chain codes because they aren't people under any of the Star Wars regimes for the past several thousand years. So yeah, that would be a cool storyline to expound upon at some point in the future. Based on what they said about Gunji and how they didn't intend to hurt him, they were just going to sell him to the Empire. I think they just planned to have those fake chain codes to sell.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
But it would be cool if they were somehow going to try to use them to make themselves on paper or on network pass off as, sentient
I'm
beings.
sure it could be used for other quote unquote missions that they need to go on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like we said, they have an old clearance code, right? So, well,
But
at least
it's
now they have a
still
chain
checked out.
code.
Yeah.
Okay,
And maybe this is. Go ahead, Nathan.
Now I'm just imagining the access droids with some horrible human face mask. Like, yes, it is a wonderful day to eat, drink blue milk.
If you got enough
from
Wookiee pelts, maybe they could dress up as Wookiees.
It's 3 droids in a trench coat.
Fellow human.
Yeah. Greetings, fellow humanoid. Greetings, fellow biologicals. Isn't it a great day to respire?
But I'm wondering if they've been around for this long, is that why people don't like droids?
Oh.
No. People don't like droids because we just had this whole massive war.
Maybe Vanguards are like the first group of Nazis.
Ooh. Or at some point there was a big a war, because I mean this is Star Wars. We have galaxy wide.
Yeah, we had mecha droids just a couple episodes ago.
There you go. It was like every 15 years we have some galaxy spanning war, right? So maybe there was once a humans versus droids war, much more so than just the Clone Wars, because there were humans and humanoids on the Separatist side. Like perhaps there was this whole thing about artificial intelligence were trying to be ascendant, and the reason they don't get chain codes is because that was the thing that they used to be able to tell the difference between a replicant droid and a real biological person.
Skynet all over again.
That's right. It's Terminator. You live. All right.
And you need
so we're giving the fake chain code to Guri, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, the fake chain code is for Guri. Have we had the humanoid-looking, if not pleasure bot, but at least humanoid-looking servant droid in contemporary canon yet?
I don't think that we have.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
Like no full-on androids.
If we got the pleasure bot version, I would be a little surprised.
Yeah,
but then again,
I mean,
some of the stuff that we saw on Andor got kind of close.
Well, but then Book of Boba Fett too. Like I know they're all cybernetics, right? But then I don't know, and maybe as well in Solo or any of the background characters, we just don't know, right? That they could have quote unquote wrote some lore, but because we never have a Star Wars CCG and that doesn't have that lore on the cards, we don't know that they're an actual android or droid.
I need that lore box, baby. I need my lore box.
Yep.
So it's just a vicious cycle. But yeah, I mean, that's the only that I could think of. So yeah.
So I could see the Axis Vanguard or Vanguard Axis droids saving up those fake chain codes to give to some replicant droids. Oh, fascinating. Anywho, talk about reading too much into a kids show. Woo! All right, Nathan, take it away.
All right, so we have tons and tons of connections to the Star Wars universe, mostly in terms of the Wookiees. Gunji himself, this is the first time we've seen him since we saw him on the terrace with Master Sanube. Did not have any speaking lines in that one, but that was the Barriss Offee storyline. When Anakin and Barriss Offee are dueling, we see Gunji and the other kids from the previous episodes. So that's the last time that we had seen him. So we don't know if he had a master or if he had been off-world before. So we don't know how he survived Order 66. But we do know that he still had the lightsaber that he made in the Clone Wars. Because it is the one that's made out of wood. It's a special type of wood that is just as strong as metal. And it's basically the only wood that you can realistically make a lightsaber out of. So I love the fact that they brought that back and, for one, use that to tell the Bad Batch, hey, this is a Jedi. But also, it kind of represents his connection to nature, which was a big theme in this episode. Speaking of the connection to nature and that being a big theme, a lot of this episode reminded me of Return of the Jedi. In
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi, George Lucas originally wanted to use Wookiees instead of Ewoks, which is why Ewoks is basically just Wookiees backwards.
Yeah.
But
Woke.
the
Woke.
the reason that he didn't do that is because of Chewbacca. He realized, well, Chewbacca has been around all this technology. He's clearly from a race that knows what technology is, even if they aren't all as technologically advanced as everybody else. So he switched it up. Also, my understanding is he had a hard time getting that many tall actors because Wookiees are super tall. But hey, you don't have to care about that in animation.
Right.
But in this episode, we have a similar deal where the Trandoshans are using highly technologically advanced stuff. They're using the AATs, and then the Wookiees are fighting them off using nature, using the spiders. And that just reminded me of like the traps that the Ewoks would set up.
The trees have a plan.
Yes, they do. Speaking of the AATs, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it is a parallel that I wanted to draw. That goes back to the first episode of this season. We see that the Empire is basically looting the Separatist stuff, and that includes this. So this is the first time we've seen them use AATs as part of an Imperial thing, but they're definitely taking Separatist the war machine and using it for their own purposes. I thought it was very interesting that they kind of no longer care about the Wookiees. It makes sense because Kashyyyk is a mid-rim system. So this was kind of the whole idea in Revenge of the Sith that we need the Wookiee homeworld because it's kind of this path that the Republic can take to get to the outer rim. It's also a path that the Separatists could take to get to the inner rim. But now that there are no Separatists, we don't really need the path. There's not really another side that we're fighting that we need to get to them to fight them. So we switch over to let's loot the planet for its resources because it's no longer strategically in an important spot.
Yeah.
So I could probably talk quite a bit more about other connections. So I'm going to cut myself off there so that we don't have a 3-hour episode.
Yeah. This was a good episode of the Bad Batch as far as those of us who love deep cut Star Wars lore. Even the spider creeksters are a enemy that you have to fight in the video game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic from back in the day. And I believe the spiders in KOTOR were, of course, based on some concept art by Ralph McQuarrie, similar to the white knobby spiders that we saw in Star Wars The Living Card game way back in the day. And then also we saw them on an episode of The Mandalorian when Mando went to that ice planet with the frog lady.
With the delicious babies.
Eggs. Okay. Moving on. Question numero cuatro. Nathan, take it away.
All right. Question number 4. Is this Gunji's tribe? So that's a question that came up in the episode. They said that Gunji is looking for his tribe, but Force-sensitive children are taken from their planets, or at least under the Republic, were taken from their planets very early. So I'm not sure if Gunji knows what tribe he belongs to. So my question for you guys is, do we think that they happen to get to the right tribe? Or is this tribe going to help him get back to his right tribe? Or are they just going to adopt him into their tribe? Or something else that I haven't thought of?
I think that kind of leads into question 5.
It might. I'll answer it at this point in time, though. I'm going to say, because this is a kids show, it's going to be a la the Ewok adventure movies. And therefore, this isn't Gunji's tribe, but we may get another story somewhere in some other form of Star Wars media, or maybe another episode of The Bad Batch where they go back to Kashyyyk and they find Gunji's tribe. And so he'll be welcomed back by his parents who thought he was long dead. Now, if this wasn't a kids show and it was more like Empire Strikes Back, or Revenge of the Sith, I would say no. Gunji's tribe is dead, and he'll find out that those Trandoshans were the ones that killed them. And at some point in the future, he'll have the chance to kill the leader of the Trandoshans, who somehow survives the spider encounter, and then he'll choose not to because he is a Jedi, like the Padawans that had died before him.
There you
All
go.
right, Derrick, question number 5, sir.
So this is where I've left question 3 and 4, but so for number 5, and I'll answer. The question is this another one-off episode? So again, as I talked about my dislike in 2, that to me this just didn't feel like there was a whole lot of meat and potatoes to it. Like it was a good episode, there was stuff, but it just is like, okay, what are we doing here? To Nathan's point, even also as well, like it felt like there was parts missing from this, right? So was this supposed to be a longer 2-parter episode, right? Potentially, or something, right? Or did they just cut a few what they consider non-important, sequences to fit it within that time frame, right? So let's go back to question 3 and question 4. So my connection is at this point in time, the Wookiees would be getting captured and putting into slave trade, sell-offs for, labor camps and all that stuff, right? This is essentially
Spice
how
Mines a Kessel.
how Han Solo meets Chewbacca, right? This is where I'm expecting it. So if we get more than this, then that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting us to spend a 3 to 4 episode mini arc on Kashyyyk going through all that stuff. And that's what, and in essence, the Bad Batch should quote unquote lose, because obviously this stuff is going to continue to happen, right? There's no way for them to fight off the entire Empire. But this is how the Empire's alluded to where the Bad Batch is at, right? And then they have to run away or whatever, right? So they lose the battle, they maintain Kashyyyk, because that's really what is supposed to happen. For half of Kashyyyk is supposed to be devastated, right? It's supposed to be ransacked and all that stuff of its resources. The Wookiees are supposed to be captured. So, and I'm guessing, to answer your question just previously about Gunji's tribe, I'm guessing this, in my mind, Gunji's tribe would be captured, right? And that's how they'll make it a larger episode, that they go at least rescue Gunji's parents potentially, or they find out that Gunji's parents are captured and he has to go off, and that's how Gunji, quote unquote, lives on, or we don't know, right? At this point in time, because obviously he is a high commodity being Jedi, so I don't think he can stay on Kashyyyk, because again, I think there's going to be continuation of the Empire devastating it. So I would think he has to leave for whatever reason.
Yeah, and there's even a hint toward that your theory is correct, because Commander Venomore of the Trandoshans in this episode, we see that they haven't killed that one Wookiee that they haven't captured. He's in handcuffs, and when he protests, they whip him like he's already getting prepared to be a slave. So clearly they have these Trandoshans have been capturing some Wookiees on Kashyyyk in this very story. Nathan, what do you think? Is this just another one-off episode?
At this point, I have to question, what do we count as a one-off episode? Because in a sense, everything we've gotten. Yeah. Well, in a sense, the first 3 as well. The first 2 are a 2-parter, but going to get Dooku's stuff, Dooku's war chest, is kind of its own separate story. The Solitary Clone relates to the larger overall story of the Bad Batch and having Crosshair. But in a sense, it's been a very episodic season, and even last season was pretty episodic. So I think the answer is kind of yes, it's a one-off episode, but also at this point, I expect there to be like 14 one-off episodes in this season. I think the next 2 are connected to each other because they both come out this Wednesday. The Clone Conspiracy and Truth and Consequences, I think, is basically a 2-part episode. And of course, the Spoils of War and Ruins of War, I think, obviously that was a 2-part episode. But outside of that, I think it's all going to be like one-off episodes. It's episodic. That just kind of is what it is at this point. Now, I do think that this episode relates to a lot of other things in Star Wars, including the Wookiee slavery and Chewbacca being a prisoner of the Empire, the Wookiees on the spice mines of Kessel, and that sort of thing. But I don't think we're coming back to Kashyyyk this season. It may be something that we pick up in season 3, but probably not now.
Yeah, I think that this is a one-off episode in so much as it doesn't have much in the way of the grand theme of the Bad Batch clones are going to try and get some of the other clones to turn coat against the Empire, which we already saw with Commander Cody. But I think it actually plays into a whole different season-wide theme, which is actually going to be a way for the Bad Batch's story overall to end and explain why they weren't a thing much in the original trilogy. And that is eventually the band is going to break up. And what we have been seeing over the past 2 episodes, not including 3, because that was very much a Crosshair specific episode, is each of the batch seems to be starting to find a place where they could belong outside of being the roving A-Team Bad Batch crew. Tech was really great at the whole racing thing, and he could fit in well into that kind of into a racing team like that. Omega was great at solving puzzles and doing the Tomb Raider shtick with Fee. And then here, Wrecker, I mean, may as well have been a Wookiee born in a different body. Right down to the fact that they took a moment to show us how much he loves drinking with the Wookiees in their tree houses.
And they loved him.
And they loved him. He's big and burly and he fits in with them. And he could easily enjoy life out in the rugged forest because he is a mountain of a man who could be a mountain man. And so, therefore, this is the place where Wrecker would fit in. So, coming up, if my theory holds, we're going to see someplace that Echo feels like. I think Echo's the one who has the highest probability of joining the rebellion outright because he's almost always about we need to get back to our mission of stopping the Empire. And his experience as a former clone and all of his cybernetic enhancements make him an invaluable operative for, oh gosh, I don't even even Luthen would love to have him hanging around that organization. And that would be a great Andor Bad Batch crossover, right? And then finally, we'd have to find some place where Hunter would fit in. And that's the one
I don't think Hunter will.
Yeah, I can't figure out what would be Hunter's end game other than Hunter's
I
gonna
think
die.
he'd be the one to die or become a farmer.
Oh yeah, he'd go do what? Who was that?
With Cut.
Nathan. Yes, Cut. Thank you. I'm like, there's that clone that's off to raise his family. Maybe Hunter
from the
goes
episode Cut and Run.
I could see him taking Omega and just doing that.
Just being a dad, being space dad, being proto Mandalorian.
Yeah. But if my theory about Omega wants to go and be a treasure hunter with Fee holds, then she'd be off doing that stuff, and Hunter would have to find something else to do. Or maybe he goes with her because he still feels the need to protect her.
Yeah.
Could be. But I also think Omega kind of fits in everywhere because she also did the whole, reaching out to the tree thing, which I think plays into the theory that she might be force sensitive. Because that felt like a Jedi thing that Gungi was reaching out to the trees, and then Omega was doing the same thing. All the
Wookiees were doing that, though. That's where Gungi learned it from. So I'm not saying she couldn't be, but all the Wookiees were talking to the trees, right? That way.
Well, there was specifically the scene where he goes out and touches the tree, not near the Trandoshans or anything, but back near the village, and she goes out and touches the tree with him.
Speaking of Gungi doing Jedi stuff in the forest, when we were talking about the firefighting, I almost wanted a scene where he was going to do some force wave projection to backdraft snuff out a bunch of flames all at once, like whoosh, and cut off the oxygen real quick and just put out the whole fire. I thought that was going to be a cool, and now the force, da, 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 padoosh. That would have been awesome. Anyway,
and now the way of the far paw.
That's right.
The furry paw.
No, the far paw.
The forest paw. All right. Well, if any of those things happen on the next episode or future episodes of The Bad Batch, we will, of course, dissect every tiny detail of it here on What a Piece of Junk. But we're not the only game in town on the Fandom Podcast Network, because we all know how you nerds are out there. You love to dissect everything that you care about, and whatever your interest is, we have a show for it here on the FPN. So let's take a quick break so that y'all can find out about the other podcasts out there for the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin. I hope you guys check out some of those particular podcasts and find something new to really enjoy. And speaking of new things that we're going to enjoy, guys, we got a release date this week for Star Wars Visions Volume 2, and the date that all of the episodes drop is a very important one for Star Wars fans. It is May the 4th of this year. So may the 4th be with you, and may Star Wars Visions Volume 2 also be with you all at once. You don't have to wait for the week-to-week release. Binge watchers rejoice. Derrick, you were talking about this before we got on the air. What all have we learned here in this announcement?
So we got quite a bit of information. So we'll kind of go through each briefly here that we'll talk about. So the big overall arch of this season, though, was that it's not all Japanese animation, which is what season one was, right? So this is going to be from all over the world, which is super exciting. So we have an episode called The Sith, which is going to be done by Studio El Guri, which is in Spain. So I don't know if you guys watch Spain animation, Spaniard animation. I guess I don't know.
I do not watch Spanish animation. No.
I'm going to give you a spoiler here for the entire thing, so you don't have to keep asking. The answer is no. I am not familiar with any animation from insert name of country here, because none of these animation studios are from the United States.
Or Japanese, which you've seen at least a few.
Well, there is one actually. The Art Shitagio. I am probably pronouncing that incorrectly.
Shitagio.
Sure, that one. That's from Japan, but you know what? I don't know them. So
Anyways, we got a lot. We got a lot. So the Sith, right? So we got one called Sith. So we're guessing that's dealing with something with the dark side of the Force, right? And we'll have potentially the Acolyte come out next year, right? Or was it later this year? I can't remember. I think it's next year, right?
I think we don't know for sure yet, do we? I think
because I feel like they're still filming that. I thought they said they were taking that till springtime this year.
Okay, yeah. I think we have some crazy rumors that it might show up in the wintertime or at holiday season of this year, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I've got it showing release date of Friday, August 11th.
Oh,
of
I was
this
way
year.
off. Yeah.
But this is based on IMDb, and sometimes they get.
I feel like that's supposed to be the whatchamacallit. I thought the one with Jude Law, the
Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew. I feel like that's supposed to be, but I don't know.
Well,
We'll see.
this definitely says the Acolyte.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean it's IMDb. Sometimes they get information that is
Yeah,
less than
OG
correct.
OG that was released 3 years ago at a Star Wars celebration.
Yeah.
So, anyways, then we got what it's called the Screechers Reach by Cartoon Saloon, which is in Ireland.
Fascinating.
So leave their name of their studio to be Cartoon Saloon, right, for Ireland. So but they've done stuff that I don't know, again, as Nathan said, Wolfwalkers I know of. I've seen that before. I haven't watched it, but I know of it. That is on Disney, actually, I believe, or maybe it was Apple TV, now that I think about it. And then we have In the Stars, which is done by Punk Robot, which is in Chile. So that one would be pretty cool. Then we have the title I Am Your Mother, not I Am Your Father, but I Am Your Mother by Studio Artemin, which is out in the United Kingdom. And then we have Journey to the Dark Head, by Studio Mir, which is out of South Korea. So I bet that's going to be pretty crazy when you're thinking Journey to the Dark Head.
I feel like I've heard of Studio Mir.
They've done Dota Dragon's Blood Book 3, which is to be released last year, and Lookism. So they're pretty relatively new. They only entered in 2017 based off their little snippet here. So maybe you've seen something. So.
I understand where I may have heard of. You said they started in 2017?
Yep.
Well, that doesn't fit with this at all. I just looked them up, and it says that they worked on The Legend of Korra, which aired from 2012 to 2014.
I think
very
Derrick,
impressive.
What you're reading here is that.
I see it now. I see. Never mind.
The particular director.
The director. Sorry.
Okay. So they also worked on Young Justice, which I'm a huge fan of Young Justice.
See, there you go, Nathan. You know this animation studio.
I know this. I know their animation.
It'll look like a bunch of beefed up Jedi. That'll look like a bunch of beefed up Young Justice superheroes.
But now, see, the superheroes in Young Justice aren't always beefed up. So that's
they're feminine too. They're feminine too.
They also worked on Batman and Superman: Battle of the Super Sons. Which, if you have access to HBO Max, check that out. That's a recent release. Then I watched
a smoother animation then.
Just last week, and it's pretty good. It's Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent. They're battling together, by the way, not each
against
other.
each other.
Not Batman versus Superman. Okay.
Right.
All right. Then we have the Spy Dancer by Studio La Cachette, which is France, or French in France. And then we have the Bandits of Golok. Ooh.
Nice.
And that is going to be done by 88 Pictures in India. So is Golok the Bandits of Golok? Do we know anything about Golok?
Golok, it sounds so familiar. But I've been on this whole kick about Star Wars treasure hunters recently, and so I'm excited to see this.
Okay. Then we have an episode called The Pit, which is actually a joint with D'Art Sotagio, which is the Japanese, and Lucasfilm Limited.
Oh,
so
wow.
This one is when they're working together.
I've heard of Lucasfilm.
Hey, I know that one.
That one. Studio Mir in this.
And the co-director is Justin Ridge. He's produced the Emmy-nominated series Star Wars Resistance. And his also credits include Star Wars Rebels, Storks, The Cleveland Show, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and Avatar The Last Airbender.
So probably a friend of Filoni's that came over from Avatar.
Yes.
Almost certainly.
And then the last one is Awe AAU Oz song, which is done by Triggerfish, which is a South African company. So
Then that probably means it's Au's song.
Au's song.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, that's so close to Aura Singh.
That's what I was thinking, right? Is it
Mm.
something to do with Aura?
It probably has absolutely nothing to do with her.
Yeah, we're totally off.
Just like I Am Your Mother, like my immediate thought is, it's going to be a Padme thing. Probably not.
Yeah.
No, but it's probably got a Mother Jedi in it.
Probably, yes.
So she's protecting something, right? Or there are two people that are battling, and the one finds out the one's the mother, right? So,
Yeah, I could definitely see it. That, we talked about how the force-sensitive children are taken from their planets very early. It could be a Jedi who didn't know their parents because they were taken so early, and they find out, oh, wait, I'm fighting my mother. Who knows?
Ooh. Yeah, that would be cool. All right.
So,
Well, yeah,
anyways.
we'll be looking forward to dissecting all of those on a future
on May the
episode of the
4th.
podcast. That's right. May the 4th be with you. And in this case, may Star Wars Visions Volume 2 be with you. And speaking of stuff that's cool for us to talk about on future episodes, we got a teaser poster for Mandalorian Season 3 released where we see the Mando standing on top of his new Naboo starfighter starship with Grogu in the bubble. And Mando is standing there with his pistol in his left hand and the darksaber in his right hand. So that looks pretty awesome. And that is a gorgeous rendition of the darksaber.
It's only cool if he's on the nose of the Naboo fighter while Grogu's flying it. And
Oh,
he's using
yes.
it to fend off the lightsabers.
Well,
Just like I was
Grogu-
showing you guys with Samurai 7 at the beginning
Grogu
of that.
can't be piloting it, though. He's in the bubble. He's in the
He's
wrong
using the
spot.
Force.
But he's using the Force. Come on.
He's pulling the switches
He's-
from beyond.
And not just that, there used to be an astromech pod. Like, how do they control a spaceship? So there's got to be some type of control set up somewhere in there.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, if Grogu jumps down into the astromech pod and starts like pressing buttons and whatnot in the pod, I'd be impressed.
That would be cool. I do love this classic sci-fi feel of this poster as well, because not only is the darksaber glowing all, epically, but there's a beautiful star-filled sky behind Mando with like almost Bespin-esque clouds like Cloud City, and then a planet in the background with a little moon orbiting that planet. And of course, the guys are parked. I think they're parked. They might be flying now that you mention it, Derrick, but the rocks in the background are crying out to be a new millennium version of a artist rendition of the Vasquez rocks from
That is
California.
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, the classic Star Trek rocks back there, or alien planet rocks from Doctor Who or whatever.
Well, and this poster to me actually feels more Star Trek-y
It
than
does.
it does Star Wars.
Yeah, that planet and the Starfield background are very Trek. It almost looks like
especially
you
new
could swap
Trek,
out
right,
that
too,
logo for
right?
Strange New
And he's-
Worlds.
Yeah, and even anything that's been put out by Discovery Plus or Paramount Plus.
And that kind of 45-degree angle, like it's not quite 45 degrees, but
It's definitely view
Mando is tilted. He is not standing straight up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Moff Gideon has pissed him off for the last time, and he is on tilt.
That's right.
And I'm just trying to like look at the zooming in on the picture too as much as you can, like what's behind it. Like is it all mountains, or is that part of Star Destroyer, or what would be? I don't know.
Or are they like on some asteroid out beyond this planet's normal
Yeah.
ring? Because the
No,
rocks are very jaggedy. Like they're like it
I
could be
think-
an asteroid.
Or like an ice planet again.
Yeah.
I think it is the Space Vasquez rocks. It's on the same planet as Space Boston.
Space Boston. Hey Mando, you're gonna park your car in the yard? Come on, we gotta see the little.
We gotta
guy.
get to the harbor.
We gotta get to the harbor. The Mon Calamari flan ain't gonna spend itself. you
That
know
is so
what
wicked wizard.
I'm saying? Your new ship is wicked wizard. Anyway, okay.
Anyways. But
So,
it
yeah,
does
we'll
look
see.
cool. So
It's an epic poster. New mobile phone wallpaper alert for me. That's for sure. That's
and
awesome.
he's always shiny, except that his cape is torn. So
Yeah, what's up with that? Come on, man. Come on, Din. Get your cape fixed.
I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, well, we got one more thing to talk about on this episode of the podcast, and it's a kind of a think piece, if you will, from our friends over at Comic Book Resources, or CBR.com. And it is a list, because man, does the internet love listicles. It is the 10 saddest Star Wars deaths. So, in the Star Wars universe, many beloved characters have met untimely fates. So is the subhead for this article from January the 27th from our friend at CBR, Mr. Wes Burton. Derrick, we were anxious to discuss this, and then we can talk about whether we agree with Burton's rankings, and then maybe some deaths that didn't make this list that we felt should have.
Yes.
So take it away, Derrick.
Okay, so we'll obviously start at number 10 and work our way down. And again, hopefully Nathan hasn't pre-looked at this as we talked about it, so this will be fun if it's getting his first time reactions.
It is.
At number 10, right off the bat, Uncle Owen and Anne Peru met a grisly end.
They did. The most dramatic moment for my young eyes in the original Star Wars, and I think for a lot of young kids, because not only do we see skeletons, which wasn't all that common in kids' media back in the day, but they are like burnt, charred skeletons with some flesh still kind of hanging on, which is wild when you consider the way that people normally die in Star Wars movies. Even in later parts of that Star Wars movie, when you get shot with a blaster, you typically just take it and go down. You don't get horribly disfigured and almost, disruptor blasted from Star Trek or whatever.
Yeah, this feels like they use flamethrowers. I mean, obviously the farm itself is burnt to a crisp. I think they just kind of did it with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru inside.
Absolutely. Well, and it could have been like the way the blast is. It too could have been flamethrowers. Could have been a grenade, a concussion grenade or something. And they just, like I said, were on fire on their way out, right? So,
but of course, this, as the author mentions here, this moment was more than just the death of Luke's family. It was the end of his childhood. And the end of any sympathy he might have had for the Empire. Because, at one point he talks about wanting to go to the Imperial Academy, and he was all excited that his friend Biggs was going to join the Imperial Academy and go off and do great things for the benevolent empire that rules the galaxy. And now he realizes they are none of those things.
And so really, would this be number one if it was the 10 happiest Star Wars deaths?
Maybe it would be number
one. Because
if
it was the happiest, because then this is what kicks off Luke to
maybe number one of the most impactful, because without this we wouldn't have the saga.
Impactful, yes. It's number one or two.
So okay,
but
all right, go ahead,
it is pretty grisly.
So number 9, Shmi Skywalker didn't deserve her fate. Shmi. What about Shmi?
Yes.
So, and this is a picture, at least, with Anakin carrying the body bag of his mother. So, all the way. So.
I agree completely that she did not deserve this fate, and I kind of agree with the recent Star Wars Marvel comic books interpretations of how Palpatine orchestrated the Tuskens killing Shmi, or at least capturing Shmi, not killing her, but capturing her, and it was part of Palpatine's further machinations on trying to get Anakin to go on over to the dark side by embracing all this rage. He finally finds his mother again, only to have her die almost immediately, basically in his arms. And so then, of course, I killed them, not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Yeah, that brings up a question about how does Palpatine know that Anakin has this ability? And the ability that I'm talking about is the ability to sense friends and family members in danger. I thought it was interesting seeing in the prequels that Anakin has that ability, because it explains why in Empire Strikes Back he knows, hey, if I torture Luke's friends, he's going to come after them because I know that that's going to reach out through the Force to him. But I always felt that it was more of a Skywalker thing, and Vader knew he could do that because he had experienced this earlier in his life. If Palpatine knew that that was going to happen, that raises a question of how does he know that? And maybe is this not a Skywalker thing, but just a general, if you have those attachments thing.
Maybe so, but also perhaps Palpatine just knows it because the Sith know that they can torture innocents to attract or to rankle the Jedi. Because remember, the Grand Inquisitor says something very similar in the opening parts of the Obi-Wan series, where they're messing with that with innocent people to make the
Children are easily manipulated.
Yes, the rogue Jedi to show himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
But I agree completely that this is a very sad death.
Well, all death could be sad, right? So
Well, true. Yeah.
Number 8, Ben Solo's redemption was short-lived. Yes, because Rey should have died and Ben should have been the one to live on.
So from a storytelling standpoint, you feel that this one, I disagree with this one. I think it makes perfect sense for Ben to pay the price for his misdeeds. Redemption equals death is a thing in wider media, but definitely in Star Wars. It's kind of a parallel to Anakin Skywalker himself. He redeemed himself at the end of his life and then passed on. So I don't think that's. I think it's almost cathartic,
So you don't find this death to be sad?
I mean, as you mentioned, all death is sad, but I don't find this one to be as sad as the previous two.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're the bad guy and you do a bunch of horrendous things and you kill innocent people and all that stuff, to me, you get what you deserve. So even if you are quote unquote saved, no matter what you do at the end of the day, you still killed all those other people that didn't deserve it. So,
well, that's true. But I feel like Ben was redeemed, and so I was sad that he died. I would have liked to have seen him, I would have liked to have seen a further story, if in just comics or a novel, of him in hiding. Like Rey does something to make everyone think that he died, but she knows that he's secretly still alive, and he's out there under an assumed name, a new look, almost like a vigilante, using his abilities to try and put right all the things that he did wrong horribly. And so you get a whole redemption storyline of him, trying to make amends for all the horrible things that he had done. I thought that would have been a cool way for his character to go on into the future. But I also understand, as Nathan's so eloquently pointed out many times, in Star Wars, redemption equals death. And to the headline here, Ben Solo's redemption was short-lived. Well, compared to other Darksiders that got redeemed, Ben lived for quite a long while. I mean, Anakin dies almost immediately after he gets redeemed.
Well, there's like 10 minutes to be fair, though, after, because Luke's got to carry him the whole way there.
Well, true.
Well, but they had the elevator. It was right over there.
But see, but yes, Return of the Jedi is the whole thing. I got it. But my point is, Ben not only lives long enough to go help her fight Palpatine, but he steals a spaceship and goes and picks up a blaster and gets some holocron deal so he can fly back to Exegol, because he parks that TIE fighter next to Luke's X-wing, right? The only way this would have been cooler in Rise of Skywalker is because that's Luke's X-wing, that's Red 5, yeah, is if somehow Ben Solo had gotten a TIE X-1, a TIE Advanced, Vader's ship,
Vader's custom TIE,
and flown that Vader type model to land it next to the X-wing.
JJ missed his chance.
Well, he missed lots of
I feel like there's several things that were missed in that movie, but
yeah, absolutely, he missed a bunch of chances. But they did what they could. So my only dispute with the author here is that when it comes to Darksiders who switch back to the light side, the only character I can think of that got more time after he made the switch was Darth Revan, because he didn't die for his redemption. He ended up doing a lot of what I just said about how now I'm going to go out and fight evil in the galaxy.
He's going to go help the poor and go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway,
right. Number 7, Qui-Gon Jinn could have helped Anakin step away from the dark. I mean, we obviously wouldn't have had anything if Qui-Gon would have lived.
I don't know why this is number 7 and not number 1 or even point 1. This is the duel of the fates.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and the fates involved are Anakin Skywalker and, as a consequence, Darth Vader.
The galaxy.
Well, fate of the galaxy for sure. Fate of Anakin definitely, but fate of the galaxy by extension.
Yeah. So pretty much all the sorrows that happen in episode 2 onward, or even between episode 1 and episode 2, because now we've got a little bit of that story. Qui-Gon's death is directly responsible for it. I think Qui-Gon would have trained Anakin better. I think Qui-Gon could have talked to Count Dooku and said, hey, this is not right. You need to come back to the light side. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but your methods are not good. And don't trust that Sidious dude.
I feel like they would have made the three amigos would have been Count Dooku, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. I mean, don't we kind of get Qui-Gon trying to give Dooku that speech in Tales of the Jedi when he's young, Qui-Gon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he would have succeeded because Count
He's
Dooku
older
wouldn't
and
have gone
wiser.
on it. Well, but
Right.
that was the whole reason Count Dooku does submit at the end, is because Qui-Gon dies because the council didn't listen to him, right? That
Yeah.
was the whole point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I don't
and
think
Sidious
Count Dooku would have. Yeah.
brings up the point of we both lost an apprentice today. Without that point, I don't know that Dooku goes through with what they've been planning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think this should be way further up the list.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anyway.
Number 6, Obi-Wan Kenobi gave his all for the galaxy. So this is about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
Yeah, Obi-Wan's obviously allowed himself to die in episode 4. And while I agree that this was very, very important and needed to happen because he understood this needs to happen, I also agree that it was pretty sad because, Luke had just lost his uncle, who was his father figure, if you will, and his aunt. And then here he's kind of got Obi-Wan as his surrogate dad. Even the one guy who can tell him stuff about his real dad, at this point, he knows little to nothing about. And then he sees this guy die as well. So it's absolutely sad.
There is an immediate sadness to this one. But I think in the long term, the sadness is kind of undercut by the fact that Obi-Wan's Force Ghost comes back. So he's not truly gone. So for that reason,
no one's ever truly gone,
I suppose. But for that reason, if I were doing this ranking, I would probably put him a little further down on the list. But the immediate sadness,
further down or further up?
Further, closer to 10.
There you go.
Whichever direction you feel like that is.
Its level of sadness is lesser
on your own point of view.
It's from a certain point of view. This was really, really good, not really sad.
No, but I feel like the immediate sadness it deserves a spot on the list. But
yeah, because it's Alec Guinness, so yes, it's sad. So no, I'm with you, Nathan. Like this one, at the end of the day, the more they've expanded on Obi-Wan's back history, the more you realize, well, Obi-Wan had to die. Like he just had to die. Like he's been preparing himself to die. Like he's kind of taken on that whole, Jesus and blah blah blah. Like, and he's like, if you strike me down, I'll be more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Well, then it's like that. He knows he just has to die. That's why he just does it, right? So I agree with you. It's not really saddest because at the end of the day, he has to die because that's how Luke becomes then who he is, right? So
it's the death of the mentor, which is much like redemption equals death. The death of the mentor is a very widely used trope. And tropes get used because they're effective. So it's not a bad thing.
And because they resonate with us. I mean, this is part of the hero's journey, which resonates with all human beings, men or women. I know the heroine's journey is, somewhat different sometimes, but of course that all depends on your culture and, to quote Obi-Wan once more, your point of view. But the death of the mentor is important in all journeys to bring us not just to where we're supposed to be in life, but almost to bring us to adulthood.
Well, and at some point there has to be a passing of the torch, right? Whether that's by natural death or it's by falling at the hand of the enemy or self-sacrifice, whatever it is, right? So it just veers different things to where that hero can then go, right? Because they could be, continue down the path, or they could go down the path of evil and vengeance, right? So it just leads to different things. And then it really is just hopefully the mentor did, polish them up enough that they follow the right path as they're supposed to. So, All right. Speaking of ones that didn't follow the path for quite a while until the end, Anakin came through in the end at number 5. So talking about Anakin Skywalker's death, and all I have to say is it's long overdue, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's it's almost like I almost feel like this one should be more impactful on the list than number 5. Like the level of sadness for me as a kid was a lot higher because I went to see Return of the Jedi in theaters, and but there had been some debate, even amongst kids my age, about whether Darth Vader was lying to Luke about being his dad. And I was very young, but that still I knew that was a big deal. Um, but seeing him take off when Luke takes off Vader's mask and we see him as a quote unquote real person, because for young kids back in the day, sometimes you thought of Darth Vader as an evil robot. And Luke seeing his dad, and then he watches his dad die after his dad had finally saved him and done the right thing. It was very sad for me. I cried in the movie theater. It was a big deal. And I agree that yes, his redemption equals death, and this needed to happen for the sake of the galaxy. But first, he needed to turn back to the light side for the sake of the galaxy, because I think watching Vader turn back to the light side helped cement in Luke's mind that not only is the light side gonna win, but we can win not necessarily with overwhelming force and violence and crushing our enemies. The thing that saved the galaxy was the love between a father and son, not the rebel fleet, and not the destruction of the Death Star, not the death of Palpatine. Because as we all know now, Palpatine was only gone for a little while. Because Ming the Merciless never dies. So there you have it. I would put this at number 3 or maybe even number 2.
Yeah, I would definitely put this. I haven't looked at 1 through 4, so I don't know what's coming up, but I agree that this is a much sadder death than Ben Solo's. And it's because of that relationship with Luke Skywalker being his son, and seeing his son with his own eyes for the first time, just in time to pass away, and never seeing his daughter with his own eyes. He never gets to see Leia with his own eyes. And that really ramps up the sadness. With Ben, he's with Rey. Their connection is, their connection in the Force is huge, but their connection on a personal level is fairly superficial. The connection between the father and son is really what makes this death sad. So I agree. This one goes closer to 1.
Yeah.
Well, and this one, you almost feel bad too for Anakin, right? Because he does go through a lot of stuff, right?
Well, yeah.
Not saying he didn't, but as we know more and more about him, right? It really does make him feel like you feel bad for the guy, right? Because he's had a lot of bad things happen to him. So not that Luke didn't have that either, right? It seems like tragedy falls the Skywalker family quite rapidly around, but right.
Anakin has had almost an entire lifetime of living with the consequences of his bad decisions. The entire empire, him being more machine than man, all of that are the consequences of his own actions. So he's had that time to have those regrets. Whereas Ben, he's still a young man. He hasn't had those major consequences. The consequences he had were that he got to be supreme leader for a little while.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this was definitely sadder.
Well, but also with regard to Ben Solo, consequences include being responsible for the death of Luke Skywalker, and then, well, almost, but yeah, basically. But then also he had to kill his own father, which he thought was going to be the answer to everything, but really just was something. It really was
cleaved him in
terrible.
two.
Yeah. For him, the consequences were terrible. But I think the other major connection there for Rey and Ben was their individual family lineages, and the way that Palpatine and Skywalker families had been sort of enmeshed for generations. So they were closer than they realized. even before they, or up until they realized they were a dyad in the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shall we move on to the next
All right,
one?
number 4. Leia's death brought an end to an era.
Leia's death was very sad, although with the way the story had to be truncated in The Rise of Skywalker, it wasn't quite as impactful as you had hoped because there wasn't really a scene of her dying. Because this is what makes it even more sad, because Carrie Fisher had actually died as well. So for me, that's what puts this number 4 is the right spot for this one, because I mean, talk about saddest character deaths. It was sad because that character was amazing, but also sad because it helped us to really come to grips with, we had to do this because Carrie Fisher is really, really dead. You know.
Mm-hmm.
For me, if you're talking about within the context of Star Wars, I don't find Leia's death to be all that sad. I feel like it's more of a passing of the torch thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of barely hanging on towards the end anyway. In the context of the real world, knowing that Carrie Fisher passed, that's what was sad.
Yeah.
To me. So I don't even know how to place that.
The problem is they toyed with our emotions way too much with her. Had she died in The Last Jedi, when she got sucked out into the vacuum of space, that would have been more meaningful than what we got here. Just because, yes, unfortunately, with Carrie Fisher's then untimely passing and them trying to fragment it, it wasn't a good portion of a story to really put together because it really wasn't well done. That's why I think there's really, I think to your point, like had it, because let's be honest, like really at the end of the day, that should have been a major plot point in the movie, and it really wasn't. You know?
Yeah, and you can tell, even if you didn't know what was going on, you can tell some of those scenes are spliced together.
Oh,
in
definitely.
a weird way that you're like, if you didn't know what was going on, you just think, man, this is not great editing.
Not great editing.
The decision to reuse the cut footage and all was an emotional one made by all of the suits at Lucasfilm in a very emotional moment. They should not have done it that way. They should have recast Leia to give the character a proper send-off with a, like Derrick said, a more emotional story beat for such a legacy character to meet her end almost, unseen in shadow is very much a letdown.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact it's like, oh, she just goes to lay up on a thing that looks conveniently like where they're going to lay her tomb, and she just lays there, and she drops her medal or whatever that she goes to Chewie, and it's like, really, guys, she finally dies, and now you're going to give Chewie a medal? Like, it's like, come on.
Well, remember the thing about that medal? It turned out that was Han's medal. That Leia had been keeping.
What's I'm saying though, but it's like the whole thing, and it just is like, oh, this is just bad writing.
Well, I'm saying I'm agreeing with you because even at this point, Chewbacca doesn't get his own medal; he just gets Han's hand-me-down medal.
Well, and they didn't really explain in the movie that this is Han's medal.
Right, you had to read about that in the comic.
Yeah, there were a few points like that I had with that movie. I'm not going to go into it because we're talking about the deaths and not the whole movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some things that could have used some more explaining that would have made this death much sadder in Star Wars rather than the sadness really coming from real life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Number 3, losing Han was a major blow.
Yeah, Han Solo's death was really sad.
Yeah.
I'm good with it, just the way they executed it was poorly. Because
what?
The way they executed it. Like, the problem was, it was just bad writing in the movie. Had they actually done what they were supposed to do, brought all the heroes together, had our last hurrah with all our main characters, and then, and you've actually would have gotten some more better story of, Ben doing the things, because really at the end of the day, you don't even feel like Han was the bad one. Like, it should have been Luke that Ben should have stabbed, because that's who really the reason why Ben went to the dark side was because of Luke Skywalker, not because of his father. Like his father was there and not there and all this stuff. And you know, he has these daddy's issues, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like the writing to me didn't feel good enough where it's like, okay, he has to die because Ben otherwise, and then it's like, but then Ben's still a bad guy, and it's like, whatever. Okay.
Well, I think that's the whole point, is that killing Han Solo was not what Kylo Ren needed to do, but it was Palpatine manipulating him to kill Han Solo. I don't think that this was ever a plan to make it to where he would get redemption or whatever, or make peace with his daddy issues. In fact, Palpatine wanted to play that stuff up within Ben's mind so he could keep manipulating him, because this is what he does to two young Skywalker boys. I'm starting to sense even more level of villainous here. Anyway, but yeah, so I agree with you completely, Derrick. Han was not the person he should have killed if he wanted to get some kind of closure. He should have had a showdown with Luke. And in fact, the whole I didn't really get a showdown with Luke is what helped keep him on the dark side in The Last Jedi. And so I think Luke knew that if he really showed up there and really fought him, it would only make things worse. And so this whole situation with his father in The Force Awakens is bad for everybody involved. The only heroic thing about that was that Han finally accepted the fact that, hey, maybe I should take some personal responsibility and go try to solve things with our son. And
but I don't feel like that was even like the way it was written again was like it's not like they really had a good moment where it was like Ben was like, you know, like, why did you and I haven't watched it in forever, so maybe I'm misquoting it, but I it's like it's not like, you know, Han's trying to make peace, but I feel like Ben's not even like, and maybe that's just Adam Driver's early on performance as Ben was terrible. Like it wasn't like anything meaningfully connected in my point, where then when Ben whether it was Palp was manipulating him, that's perfectly fine. But there wasn't anything in there to feel like, you know, that was the conversation they were having was nice. It's like literally Han Solo shows up, hey, blah, 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 you know, I'm sorry, you know, it's okay. And then he dies. And it's like, but what's okay? Like, it's okay that you kill me. It's okay that you're sad. It's okay that you're emo. It's okay, whatever.
It's okay that you're emo.
I don't get anything because, again, it's just poor written structure because I don't know anything about Ben Solo at that point, right?
No, I feel like Kylo was saying, you know, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And I think Han, and you know, to your point of, you know, this isn't the best writing. I'm telling you what I think, not what the movie's telling you. Mm-hmm. I think that what Han was saying was, you know, it's okay for you to turn away from Snoke, to come back to the light. Like, we will accept you back.
We will forgive you.
Yeah, we will forgive you.
See, I interpreted it was simply that, like, I know you have to kill me to move on.
Well, but that's what Kylo means by I know what I have to do. Like
I felt like Han knew that.
Oh no, Han was there to quote bring our son home, because remember that's what Leia told him to do.
Oh, I thought the way I interpreted it was the only way Han could do that was he had to die because Ben was such a bad person because he was so pissed off at at Han and Leia for leaving him and to do all this Jedi stuff that he didn't want to do, that they were bad parents. That was how I interpreted that whole conversation.
Oh, so you thought Han Solo walked out on that bridge thinking, okay, I gotta go die.
Yeah, that's the only way I could bring our son back from where he was that I needed to basically wash our son's hands of all the bad stuff he's done and that I've done in my past, but and the things that I've done to him. And that's where they never explored it, right? Like, I just felt like that was it. That was, to me, where Han knew he had to die so that Ben could come back.
So Han is going out there to get sanctified for all the bad things he has done through his death. And then he will impute into Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, propitiation for Ben Solo's sins. And he accomplishes this by getting stabbed with a cross-shaped lightsaber. You know what? I wasn't there when you started talking about this, but I'm there now. I see what you mean. Actually, that makes me like the scene even more, because that's a whole different interpretation that involves Han's death, sanctifying himself, and propitiation for his son's
it's
sin.
through my sins. I will free my son.
Yeah, well, and in order to accomplish this, we use the cross-shaped lightsaber.
Yes.
Good lord, it's
Yeah.
it's less than subtle now that you say it like that.
And,
I mean,
and
this is Star
that's
Wars.
what
We
I
don't
thought.
do a lot
That's
of
what it
subtlety,
was.
so.
Like, yeah, when Han says, "I'll
Oh my
bring
god!
back our son."
And Kylo always holds that cross upside down because he's bad.
Yes,
Yes. And they're on a
because he
bridge
listens
when
to
this
heavy metal
happens.
music.
Yeah, he's too emo. Yes, and they're on a bridge, Nathan. That's right, because the bridge between God and man. Okay, all right. Anyway, well, I had always thought up until this episode of our podcast. Thank you very much. That Han had come out there thinking, if I tell him that I'm going to forgive him, he'll want to come home. I could at least talk him out of it, you know. And so maybe you're right, though. Maybe Han thinks he has to die, or most likely, the will of the Force is that Han must die. And therefore, all that symbolism is that we just talked about is right there because that's what's going to happen. And all of this definitely makes Han's death sad, but necessary.
Correct. Which, again, makes it less sad for me and more angry.
Yeah, but I think that's partly the reason because you have such a strong feelings for Han Solo. Like you're mad that he died, and you feel.
I'm
like
just mad that they didn't do more with it, right?
Yeah,
like
you
I said.
wanted him
Well,
to die a better way.
I'm definitely sad that him dying at that point in the story means that we never see Han, Luke, and Leia together in the sequel trilogy. Because a lot of people will, hate on The Last Jedi because, Luke died and we didn't get to see the three together. Well, that was never an option in The Last Jedi. That went out the window in the first movie.
Yeah.
Or the first sequel.
Okay, moving on.
All right. So that was number 3. So number 2, the loss of Rogue One was enormous. So
now Rogue One is the ship, so I'm assuming they mean all the people who were on it.
It's all the characters, the whole team, right?
Either that or the Razor Crest better be number 1.
Because that was a sad death and totally unnecessary.
True. So,
although it did really solidify Moff Gideon as the heel, I'm just gonna say.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so reading the text here, they are talking about Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor, K2SO. Gosh, I'm gonna jump in here and say this should not be number 2. I'm sorry, they weren't even bothered to name the rest of the crew. Like, how could it be quite as sad if we're not naming Bodhi Rook or any of the other guys? Yeah, like, is it sad? Yes. Is it as sad as pretty much anything else we've seen on this list?
And honestly, I was happy when they died because I'm like, hey, they kept canon. Like, there's not these random rebels that all of a sudden going to show up that should have been here, right? I mean, we got them in the space battle, right? When they had all the connectivity, right? And they had, Tantive 4, and they even showed Ghost and all that stuff that we had from Rebels. But at least the people that were on this planet had nothing else, because otherwise it's like, well, where were they in episode 4?
Off camera. They can be part of a different part of the rebellion.
Right over there. Right over there.
And then they weren't at 5 or they weren't at 6.
To your point, though, it makes more sense with the Ghost crew because they were part of a different cell. Whereas Cassian was very much, I'm on Yavin 4.
And I'm part of Mon Mothma crew.
Yeah. So, and they knew they were going to die when they went on this mission.
Yeah, it was
like
the definition of a suicide mission.
They're like 99% chance we're going to die. If we make it out, yay! But it probably ain't happening. I don't know how this got to number 2.
It's because it's a more recent Star Wars film, and everybody.
Andor.
And yes, Andor is current.
Yeah, I suppose. And like I said, I'm not saying it's not sad. But
it was very noble, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a one-way ticket mission. They knew what they were signing up for, and they got the mission completed, and that was it.
But boy, talk about redemption equals death. I mean, that works that way for the light side too.
Yep. So, all right. Any additional thoughts, Scott?
No, I think that we about summed it up for the Rogue One crew. They
pour one out.
Yes, exactly.
All right, and then here's drum roll number 1. Padme lost everything.
Yes, I agree. This is a good number one. Padme's death was very, very sad because talk about ones that were preventable and didn't have to happen. Yeah, I mean, if Anakin could have just, if one of the other Jedi could, besides Obi-Wan, could have just helped him out, any tiny little spot along his pathway, I think Palpatine's plan would have been defeated. But it wasn't because I think Palpatine knew that it wasn't going to be because he had been scheming and plotting and observing the Jedi arrogance for so long that he just knew where to hit them where they were blindsided. The dark side clouds everything, you know.
Yeah, I ascribe to the theory that Palpatine is actually transferring her life essence to Anakin. Just the way the Revenge of the Sith is shot makes me think that that was the intention. That's not just, hey, a happy coincidence. Well, sad coincidence.
Right.
So yeah, that makes it sad. I mean, gosh, she died of sadness.
Well, I mean, it really is. It is the unfortunate between Aragorn and Eowyn, right?
Mhm.
Anakin failed, and therefore, Padme died. But had Anakin won, then Padme would have lived. So, I mean, it's sad, right? Because it's like, well, and unfortunately, it's just due to bad dialogue / script again. Like at the end of the day, though, like Padme got what she deserved, though, because she totally ignored all the mental illness signs that Anakin Skywalker was doing.
Not only
when
that,
he
I
killed
don't think
everybody.
that means you deserve this.
I didn't say that. It just made me like she could have helped herself.
She could have. It was an
and
avoidable
she
death.
was also aware of the whole "I'm not supposed to date Jedi" rule. I
Mhm.
mean,
Well, she was robbing the cradle.
well,
we thought Yoda and Yordle. I mean, this is come on.
Once you get past 25, nobody cares.
But they didn't get
check.
past 25.
Checks notes.
He was
Oh wait,
16,
they were a lot younger
wasn't
than
he?
that.
In Attack of the Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones. I feel like I don't know. So.
No, I want to say he was 18.
Was he finally 18 at that point? At least
because he was 8 in
Passes
Phantom Menace.
differently in a
and-
society that embraces faster than light travel. There,
Yeah.
I'm gonna. There you go.
I mean, yeah,
that's
it's
what
not
we're
like we
gonna-
didn't have 500, 600 years ago. People were marrying off their teenage kids. So
I mean, they
And-
were, yeah.
And if you go to Derrick's home state, they are no, sorry,
so that's West Virginia. So.
West Virginia. My bad.
Anyways, yes. So yeah, so Padme number one.
I'm not. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not going to dispute that ranking.
I'm okay with that one. There's a couple of deaths that should have been on here.
But,
All right,
but
Nathan,
to me, Anakin should have been ahead of that though, because he knowing that he killed Padme makes his more tragic.
Mm.
So like if I can't. To me, Anakin always has to be above Padme. So.
I could see making that argument. I could see arguing that they're 1 and 2, in whichever order. I noticed that everything on here is live action.
That's true.
And I think 5's death in particular was extremely sad because 5's figured out the clone chips and the whole conspiracy. 5's figured out that Palpatine was Sidious.
Mm.
And he tried to tell people. And like no one would believe him. He tried to get in contact with Anakin Skywalker. By the time Anakin and Rex got there, so did Palpatine's crew, and it's just like being that close and like knowing that everything is a lie, like figuring out the whole conspiracy and then not quite getting to tell anybody. I think he deserves a spot in this list.
I agree. And animation-wise, I also think the death of Satine was very sad. Certainly for Obi-Wan, but even for the audience. I mean, come on, that was just... If there's anybody that deserved a happy ending in Star Wars, it was Obi-Wan, even at that point in the story. And yeah, it was just heartbreaking.
I could even see an argument for the death of Maul.
Well, that was going to be one of my suggestions. I think Maul should have been on here. And to be honest, the saddest death in Star Wars, out of all the deaths that I've ever had, none has made me cry than Kanan Jarrus.
Ooh, yeah,
When he got
Oh,
his vision
yeah.
back right
Yeah.
before.
yeah. Kanan's death was very sad.
With that heroic sacrifice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
A textbook noble sacrifice, but very sad. It's because Ezra had lost his real dad, and then Kanan was his new father figure. I mean,
Well,
almost
and
the
Hera
same
was
things.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, that was the one that hurts me the most. So
Yeah.
to me, that is the sad. And to your point, Nathan, though, all of them have been animated, right? So
Yeah, and there's one other that I want to put on here, even though it's not even canon anymore. Chewbacca died when a moon fell on him in one of
Vector
the
Prime.
EU
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
And I refused to read that book when I heard
Well,
that happened.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, any of the deaths of the Ewoks, that was sad, right? When
Oh
you
man,
see
that
him-
Ewok gets shot, and his friend
yeah,
stops to check
yeah,
on
and he
him.
goes,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and he like bends over, right, and keels over.
Oh,
and
man.
he's sad. Like that was more gruesome than some of these deaths.
That's true.
I was sad when Quill died in season 1 of The Mandalorian.
And hey, we gotta pour one out for our friend Eric Walker when Mace died.
Yeah, when
You
Mace
know?
died. Although, as Eric likes to point out, Mace could have survived that.
Well, I believe it. I believe it.
yeah.
He-
Yeah,
he'll be
I don't think Mace
more
is dead.
cybernetic, so he'll be.
That's it.
He'll come
He's
back.
more machine than Mace now. All right.
Anyways, so but yeah, no fun list. So anything else closing up, guys, before our 10 saddest deaths? So
No, only just to tell the listeners that if they have a death they think should have been on that list, please email us or tweet us or post in the Facebook group. Let us know. We'll mention it in the next episode if anybody wants to chime in.
and I'll post the link on the Facebook group now. So
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, speaking of cool Star Wars flashbacks and callbacks to various medium, let's do Derrick's favorite part of the show real quick. What Star Wars t-shirts are we wearing this week? I'm going to go first because we're going to let Nathan go last because he is like, swimming in Wookiees this week. As well he should be. But I pulled out my WrestleMania 2 t-shirt, my favorite Star Wars shirt of all time because it's a Star Wars pro wrestling crossover shirt that I never in a million years would have expected they would actually make this. But it is Zam Wessel in Attack of the Clones, Episode 2, and it is done in a retro 80s style, just like a WrestleMania shirt that I wore yesterday to Charlotte, by God, North Carolina.
was that the Ultimate Warrior on it?
Yeah, the one with the Ultimate Warrior on it. I wore it to go see WWE NXT Vengeance Day live at the Spectrum Center in the Queen City, and it was great. And this T-shirt is great. And big thanks to friend of the show Terry Lee for getting this for me when she went to Star Wars Celebration, and they had a little celebration of the anniversary of Attack of the Clones, the movie in which Zam Wessel appears. Derrick, what you got?
Well, I was gonna tell you, every time I see that shirt, though, the way the camera angle is when you're leaning back,
Yeah.
and it's far enough away. When you hold it up like that, it's good. But when it's just resting on you, when it's doing that, to me, that looks like a Ferengi.
It does because of the things on her
The
helmet.
ridge, her
Yeah.
ridge in the ears. I'm like, is that Quark or is that Brunt? No, that's Sam Wessel. But it
I
looks
did
like a
not see
Ferengi.
that before, but now I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if there's anybody in Star Wars that could make herself look like a Ferengi, it's Zam Wessel because she's a
that's
shapeshifter.
true.
Yep. So, all right. So I'm not going to talk about my shirt because it's the same shirt that I always wear. But this is what I have to advertise.
Bah!
So
It's a Wampa.
it is a Wampa, and this is hand stitched or crocheted by my wife Christina.
Awesome.
So I will post it on the Facebook group as well. That if somebody would like a order of a Wampa, it's very soft and fuzzy. And he's about 16 to 18 inches tall, really big arms and all that stuff. So
Nice.
Now, can I get one with a detachable arm?
I told her that would be hilarious. You probably could because it's actually it's like you do pieces by themselves, right, and then you stitch them. So if you got like some type of Velcro, you probably could do that.
Nice.
So all right, Nathan.
All right. Well, it is Wookiee week here at What a Piece of Junk, and I am going all out with the Wookiee. I have not only a t-shirt, but a Snuggie. This is a Chewbacca Snuggie. Oh, I love this thing. It's great on cold winter nights. It almost feels like a Life Day robe, but it is Chewbacca print. It's got the bandolier going across it. And underneath that, I am wearing beware of Wookiee. Because, man, we had to be beware of Wookiees and their spider friends this week.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm on their side. Forget those Trandoshans.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I'm surprised you don't have another shirt underneath that one of the one with the Save the Trees one, right? The one that your dad got you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that one's a tiny fraction bit too small.
Oh, too many times in the wash, huh? So,
yeah.
But to me, that would have been funny
the first
because
time I
you'd be
wore
like,
it.
And then all of that, you could pull off your shirt and then had it in your, hairy chest. You could have shaved off, save the Wookiees or something, right? So,
I mean,
wow.
I do have a Wookiee fur chest, but I'm not gonna show that on.
That's okay. That's
the
good.
podcast.
We'd get demonetized.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you guys out there want your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt or mouse pad or coffee mug or any of the other merchandise that we have, just head over to tpublic.com and check out the Fandom Podcast Network there in the search bar, and you'll see all that good stuff. And Nathan, please let folks know where they can find the show on the interwebs.
Well, there's lots of places you can find the show on the interwebs. It's like a series of tubes. You just grab one tube and it'll be on the other end. For example, one of the tubes you could grab is Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Podbean or Spotify or iHeartRadio or Google Play or YouTube. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of tubes. You can also find us on Facebook, What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, or you can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at What Wars, or you can find the entire Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network. We get real creative with some of these names. Derrick, tell us about those Apple Podcast reviews and other types of reviews.
So, as Nathan talked about, where you could download this episode, stream it as well after you're done listening, or if you're halfway through and just pissed off, frustrated, or you wanted to say, this is the best thing I've ever listened to, please go ahead and leave us a review. Apple has 5-star reviews. Google does the same thing. All that great way of just doing that, because again, it helps us get the word out there of the podcast. What a Piece of Junk. It puts us further up there for Star Wars, Bad Batch, Mandalorian that's coming up, Visions, all the cool stuff. Put that out there and gets us at the top by leaving us a review. Plus, it gives us feedback of what else we could do to better make the show something that you might want to listen to, or something that we could fix. But again, we'd really appreciate that if you would leave a review.
Okay, great. Thank you very much to everyone for listening to this show. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what we can do to change it, or whatever you didn't like about it, etc. Whatever we can do to help make this podcast more enjoyable. And please always remember to respect each other, and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.